What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to Talkin BS. I'm your host, as always, Steven Zamora. If you can, please, like I always ask, follow me on Twitter at ZamoraBSB. That'll be the best place for any and all show updates and anything else going on with your boy. And today, if you clicked on that thumbnail, you already know what time it is. We are doing another off-season preview, this time for the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, for my subscribers, you already know what it is. You know how we do this. But if you're new here, if you're a Philadelphia fan and you never come across my content before, during these off-season previews, I am going to be covering the whole off-season, starting with some statistical weaknesses that the 76ers need to improve on. Then we go over the tools that you have in your arsenal to get better in this offseason. Then we follow that up with a list of must-dos that your GM or your front office has to take care of before going any further into the process. Then we go over some options as far as the draft, some options as far as trades, and for free agency and all the fun stuff. Then at the end, we take everything that we did and we put it in a nice graphic with the final rotation, showing everything that we put together. And hopefully it's a lineup that you guys can be really excited about heading into the next season. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Philadelphia 76ers off-season preview. So like I said, we're going to start off with the biggest statistical weaknesses that they had last season. 14th in points per game, 10th in points allowed per game, 25th in opponent fast break points, 26th in assists per game, 22nd in rebounding, 24th in effective field goal percentage, 28th in two-point percentage, 22nd in three-pointers made per game. So a lot of those numbers come down to some offensive numbers, effective field goal percentage, two-point percentage, the amount of three-pointers made, and we're going to try to address that in this episode. Now, to address those things, we got a couple tools in the toolkit. You know what I'm saying? So first off, we got the 16th overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft, 41st overall pick in the second round via Chicago. Paul Reed and future assets available for trade. Could have up to $65 million in cap space if they renounce all of their cap holds. Every first round draft pick from 25 through 29 is at least top 4 protected. If you're familiar, you will understand that Philadelphia actually doesn't have almost anybody on the roster. They have one guaranteed contract on the roster, and that belongs to Mr. MVP himself, Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey will be a cap hold, which is basically his money's being held over until the end of free agency, where they're probably going to end up giving him a max contract. But you do have some draft picks available to you. This is something that Morey has been planning. It's ever since they had James Harden and they didn't want to extend him. Well, now we know why. They were trying to plan on having all this cap space in the year 24. So Morey's been planning this. He's accumulated some draft picks, traded Harden for those draft picks, and now you guys got tradable assets and a ton of room to bring in a star. And speaking of a star, let's look at the things that we must get to before we go any further. Fill the roster with talent that supports and meshes well with Maxey and Embiid. Go for another superstar or use the space to find a lot of really good players. Don't mess up arguably the biggest offseason in Philadelphia 76ers history. All right, so now we're going to get into the fun stuff. This could be it, man. This really could be it. This could be Morey's last chance at building a team around Embiid. But more importantly, this could be Embiid's last chance at getting a real championship for the city of Philadelphia. With that said, he's going to need some help, right? We got Tyrese Maxey, and, he came out of nowhere, which was amazing. That was awesome for you guys. But you're going to need some more help. I think what they need, because they have their guard on lock for the future, they have one of the best centers in the NBA, arguably the best center in the NBA. They need a wing, and a wing who can create some offense, right? Because we have a lot of statistical evidence showing that we need to upgrade the offense a little bit. Having somebody else who could be a ball handler, a spacer, and provide some creation on the offensive end would be super helpful. And to me, I think there's one guy that's on the open market right now that fits that perfectly. Now, the question is, How do you acquire him? So I got a trade proposal. Philadelphia receives Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans Pelicans. The Utah Jazz receive Tobias Harris on a sign and trade, the 21st overall pick via New Orleans, the 2026 first from the Clippers via Philadelphia, a 2028 first from Philadelphia, and a 2030 first from Philadelphia. Then the New Orleans Pelicans receive Lauri Markkanen. Tobias sign and trade figure should be around 20 to 25 million based on reports. Philly would take on BI money into their cap space and still have 30 to 40 million to use in free agency, plus have access to the room MLE. All right, so let's go over this from New Orleans' perspective first. So they're giving up Brandon Ingram and they're giving up the 21st pick in the 24 draft. And in return, they're getting Lauri Markkanen. Danny Ainge is the head of basketball operations, I believe, in Utah, and he drives a hard bargain. He's going to ask for a ton for Lauri Markkanen. To me, this is a very fair return for Lauri, first of all. And as far as the fit in New Orleans, I think Zion had his best year when he was playing point Zion a little bit, I guess is what they called it. But he was able to handle the ball a little bit more and, initiate some more of the offense. To me, there is only one ball. You have a guy in CJ McCollum who needs the ball in his hands. Zion obviously needs the ball in his hands. And then you had Brandon Ingram as well, who wanted the ball in his hands all the time. I think you get a guy like Lauri in there and you give Zion the ball more. Lauri can make offense when he gets the ball, right? Of course he can because, he's one of the best scorers in the NBA. But he doesn't need the ball in his hand, right? He's good off screens. He's good at setting others up, setting up picks and stuff like that. And he's good off, in spot ups. So to me, they make a perfect mix and match right there. That is a front court that you can really build around and be proud of. Lauri fits a lot of the things that Zion is deficient at, and Zion fits a lot of the things that Lauri is deficient at. Now, the thing with sign and trades that I just learned is that every sign and trade is at least a 3-year contract. Only the first year is guaranteed. So if I'm Utah, I'm taking on Tobias Harris with a basically 1-year guaranteed deal with 2-year option, right? And in that place, what I'm thinking is I'm taking on Tobias Harris. I don't really have a star right now that I can, funnel the ball through and get a ton of points for because I just traded Lauri away. Tobias, if there's one thing he's good at, man, it's scoring the basketball. And it's being one of the focal points of a team. We saw that when he was with the Clippers and he ended up getting this huge, $40-something million contract that he just ended with Philadelphia. If that doesn't work, you can cut him after the season. And there's no dead money, nothing. You don't owe him anything. But if it does work, there's another valuable asset. You flip for another 2 or 3 picks. You also get 21st overall in this year's draft. So you're going to end up with 3 draft picks in the first round. You get a 2026 first because you only have 2 firsts in 2026. So now you have 3. Same thing in 2028. You have 2 in 28. Now you have 3. And then you get a 2030 pick from Philadelphia. Tyrese Maxey might still be there, but that it's going to be a completely different team. Until 2030, you have at least 3 picks in every single draft. That is nuts. And then we'll get on to Philadelphia. Philadelphia, I think this works amazing. I think you get the playmaking, right? Brandon Ingram is such an underrated playmaker. He's a very good shot creator. He really gets his guys open and in good spots like a good point guard does. He handled a lot of that responsibility throughout the years. Zion has been hurt for so much of his career already that BI's had to be the guy. Now he doesn't have to be the guy. I'm sure he'll still be the guy in a lot of situations, but he doesn't have to be anymore. And then his shot making is just incredible. He can ISO with some of the best in the game. He's almost 7 feet tall. He has handles like a guard. Like I said, his shot creation is just, and on top of that, like imagine a Brandon Ingram and Joel Embiid pick and roll. You can run a Maxey Embiid pick and roll. Then you can hit him with the Ingram Embiid pick and roll. There's so many actions you can do. And to me, now you build around those 3 as your core for the future. And so with that said, we're going to need some defenders around them, and we're going to need some spacing, and we're just going to need a lot of roster spots filled up here. So this is my next trade offer. As Philadelphia, I received Dorian Finney-Smith, and I trade to Brooklyn KJ Martin on a sign-and trade and the 16th overall pick in the 2024 draft. KJ Martin is projected to get a deal anywhere between the minimum and the NTMLE. I think it would be fair to sign him to a 3-year, $15 million contract, saving Brooklyn $11 million. Let's start with the other team first, like we do. Brooklyn receives KJ Martin and the 16th pick in the draft. KJ Martin is a young talent. I believe he's like 23, 24 years old. Still a ton of potential there. He has all the athletic tools that you need. He's anywhere between 6'6" and 6'8". Really, really good athlete. Kenyon Martin's son, right? And he can hit his open shots. He's a very good cutter, and he's a pretty good defender. You can really develop this kid into being a really good piece for you guys. You also receive the 16th pick in the draft. Good option to have because you have no draft picks in this year's draft, and that's a little cheaper on the books. You get to have a chance at another, a kid coming in and developing under your tutelage, something to get really excited about. For Philadelphia, you get Dorian Finney-Smith, who's going to play, a hybrid 3-4 spot for you. He can hit his open threes like nobody's business. He's a really good defender. He's a big guy. He can handle some of the bigger forwards in the league. He's made a ton of money in his career just being a great spot-up shooter and a really good defender. And I think you're definitely going to need that, especially how well he fits between Brandon Ingram and Joel Embiid. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He doesn't need to take away shots from anybody. He's there as a release valve for if Embiid gets doubled or Brandon Ingram has to kick it out or Maxey gets a drive and has to kick. So now let's get ready for free agency. Okay, we got 4 people on the books here. We got Joel Embiid, Brandon Ingram, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Tyrese Maxey on a cap hold. Bobby Marks of ESPN. Outside of OG, who's going to be back in New York, and Pascal, who's going back to Indiana, then it's your next tier. KCP, Clay, DeMar, Miles, Malik, Tyus. Does KCP and Miles make sense? And then you can bring back some of your depth. The Sixers would be smart to hold off on Maxey extension until after free agency. If they hold off, his new contract won't eat into the cap space, and they can sign who they want. Once free agency is over, they will have bird rights on him so they can sign him to a max contract while still over the cap. Because you have his bird rights, you drafted him, that's your guy, you've had him for more than 2 years, you can sign him to any extension that you want to keep him on the team. It would be best, and this is probably going to be the plan going forward for Morey, is to let that cap hold over until free agency is over and then give him the max extension that he deserves. That way, that money doesn't eat into the current cap space that you have so that your money isn't being dedicated to Maxey and then you can't sign another free agent, right? Think of it like a meter, right? You want to fill up your meter first, and then the Maxey contract is going to have it like spill over, right? You don't want to fill it up with Maxey because then at that point you can't spill over. They won't let you go over the cap at that point. You want to fill it up first, then you want to sign Maxey to take you over the top. All right, so next we're going to go into free agency, and we're going to check out some rumored free agents that I think would be great fits for Philadelphia. Between Embiid, Ingram, Finney-Smith, and Maxey's cap hold, the Sixers would enter free agency with over $25 million in free cap space and another $8 million from the room exception. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Klay Thompson, Bruce Brown, DeAnthony Melton. So you had DeAnthony Melton on your team last year, but he's a little undersized. So to me, out of these guys, you still have a little over $25 million. That is the perfect amount of money, and that is exactly what it's going to take to get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope out of Denver. I think he would fit seamlessly in between Maxey and Ingram. He can take on the other team's best perimeter players. He's a great screen navigator. He hits all his open shots. He's clutch. He's a 2-time NBA champion. He is everything this team needs. So I think you go and you give him that $25 million a year max. And listen, I'm a Denver fan, okay? I watched the Denver Nuggets the entire season. It would break my heart. So isn't there anything you would want more than to break the Denver Nuggets fans' heart? Yeah, but KCP would be really perfect for you guys. Then we're going to need some wing depth. So I proposed Miles Bridges, Nicholas Batum, Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin. So Caleb Martin's on a player option. We'll see if he returns to Miami. If not, that's a great option. To me, out of these guys, I think I'm going to use that room exception and I'm going to sign Kelly Oubre to $8 million a year. He did really well for you guys last year. He deserves a pay bump. So I would use that $8 million exception, and I'm signing Kelly Oubre. And then I'm calling Nick Batum, and I'm saying, hey, do you want to run it back, man? We'll bring you back in for a couple $1 million. Come back to Philly. And then just some other names that I think might be really good fits here in case none of those plans work out. Gary Payton II, Royce O'Neal, Malik Monk, Jalen Smith, JaVale McGee, Kyle Anderson. So now we got our starting five in place. We went ahead and got our sixth man in Kelly Oubre. Let's see how the rest of the roster shook out. We have Tyrese Maxey backed up by Aaron Holiday, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope backed up by Kelly Oubre, Brandon Ingram backed up by Torrey Craig, Dorian Finney-Smith backed up by Nicholas Batum, and Joel Embiid backed up by Bismack Biyombo. 13th, 14th, and 15th on the roster would be Daniel House, Joe Harris, Lamar Stevens. All right, so let's start with the guards here. So Tyrese Maxey, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Aaron Holiday, Kelly Oubre. So our starting two fit like a glove. You got Kelly Oubre off the bench, who's going to bring you a ton of points and athleticism and scoring. Aaron Holiday had a really good year in Houston. I think if you can get him for the minimum, I would propose to him, come to Philadelphia. We're going to win a title this year. You might be able to get him. Then on your wings, Brandon Ingram, Torrey Craig, Dorian Finney-Smith, Nicholas Batum. So you got some spot-up shooting. Batum's a really good playmaker for that forward spot. He actually had a really good game in the playoffs. Torrey Craig is a great defender. Not much of an offensive option, but he's a really good defender. You're going to need that wing depth. You're going to need some good defenders on that wing to play alongside with Finney-Smith and Batum. You bring in Bismack Biyombo to relieve Joel Embiid, somebody who can hold down the paint, block some shots, protect the rim. And that second unit has a bunch of defenders. So then with the 13th through 15th spots, I wanted to get some shooters. So Daniel House, Joe Harris, and then a bit of athleticism can always help. So I got Lamar Stevens on there. These guys are all switchable. They can all space the floor pretty well. Your 1 through 5 could end up being the best starting lineup in the NBA, in my opinion. You got so much offense there. You have a bunch of really good defense. Everybody can switch. You have a bunch of defenders now. You have a bunch of wing depth. Like, you have all the answers you need to go and get past the second round in the NBA playoffs. You can contend with the Boston Celtics now, who are probably going to end up taking a hit and scaling back after this season. To me, like, you guys would, with this roster, you absolutely would be one of the top tier teams. I wanted it to be a little different than normal than what everybody else is predicting, because everybody else is saying, oh, you guys are just going to get Paul George, and then you go from there, right? To me, this is just a better option because you can get a little bit more depth. You sacrifice a little bit of the money that you would be giving to Paul George in free agency, because in free agency, you always have to overpay. This way, you get Brandon Ingram. He's going to be like $10 million cheaper than Paul George. You use that money and you can get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope or, something like, and then Kelly Oubre or, stuff like that. You can get a better bench around those guys. I just think this is the best option to go. I think this is the best route. Like I said, you have a little bit of everything on this team, and I would be super excited heading into the next season if I was a Philly fan. So if you are too, please let me know down in the comments. If there's anything that you would do different, let me know. I would love to hear it. Like I said, I'm always taking criticism. I always want to hear how you guys would improve these teams in a different way. Did I give up too many draft picks? Did anything like that? Did I use the cap space well? But let me know. And if you're still here, I appreciate you so much. If you like this stuff, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing one of these for every team, and I'm going to try to get them all done before the NBA draft in June. Holla at your boy. Follow me on Twitter at Zamora BSB. You know what it is. And we out. Talking BS. We out.